Welcome. I'm really glad you are here today. Take a moment to settle in. Maybe you're listening to this because your mind feels exhausted. Perhaps you've spent hours replaying a conversation, analyzing a decision, worrying about the future, or trying to understand why certain thoughts keep returning, no matter how hard you try to push them away. Maybe you've laid awake at night, wishing you could simply turn your mind off for a few minutes and experience some peace. If so, you're not alone. Overthinking is one of the most common struggles people face, yet it is often misunderstood. We tend to assume that if our minds are constantly busy, something must be wrong. We wonder why we can't just relax. We wonder why our brains keep generating worries, doubts, fears, and endless possibilities. We begin to see our own thinking as the enemy. But what if the problem is not that you think too much? What if the problem is that nobody ever taught you what thoughts actually are? Today, we're going to explore why the mind overthinks, why trying to stop thoughts often makes them stronger, and how developing a different relationship with your thoughts can create far more peace than trying to control them ever could. Take a slow breath in through your nose. Allow yourself to arrive here fully. And let's begin. One of the most important things to understand about overthinking is that the mind is not malfunctioning when it produces thoughts. Thinking is what minds do. Your heart beats, your lungs breathe, your digestive system processes food, and your mind continuously produces thoughts. It generates possibilities, predicts outcomes, reviews memories, analyzes situations, and searches for patterns. This process is happening all day, every day, often without your conscious involvement. From an evolutionary perspective, this made perfect sense. For most of human history, survival depended upon anticipating potential threats. The individuals who noticed danger, remembered mistakes, anticipated problems, and prepared for uncertainty were often more likely to survive long enough to pass those abilities forward. Your brain inherited that system. The challenge is that your brain evolved in a world filled with immediate physical dangers, while most of the challenges we face today are emotional, social, psychological, and highly uncertain. Instead of watching for predators, the mind watches for rejection. Instead of preparing for harsh weather, it prepares for difficult conversations. Instead of scanning for danger in the environment, it scans for danger in our future. The result is a mind that is constantly searching for certainty in a world that rarely offers it. And because uncertainty never completely disappears, the mind rarely feels finished. There is always one more possibility to consider, one more scenario to prepare for, one more thing to worry about. This is why overthinking can feel endless. Not because your mind is broken, but because your mind is doing exactly what it was designed to do. The question is not whether your mind will continue producing thoughts. The question is whether every thought deserves your attention. Although overthinking can feel like a single experience, it actually shows up in several different forms. One of the most common is future-focused overthinking. This is the voice that constantly asks, what if? What if I make the wrong decision? What if this relationship doesn't work out? What if something goes wrong financially? What if I fail? The mind tries to predict every possible outcome in an attempt to avoid pain before it happens. Another form is past-focused overthinking. This is the endless replaying of conversations, decisions, mistakes, and regrets. The mind returns to the same memories over and over, searching for lessons, explanations, or ways things could have gone differently. It believes that if it analyzes the past thoroughly enough, it can prevent future pain. Then there is identity-focused overthinking. This occurs when ordinary events become deeply personal. A criticism at work becomes evidence that you're not good enough. A text message left unanswered becomes proof that someone doesn't care about you. A mistake becomes a reflection of your worth rather than simply a human experience. Many people also struggle with intrusive thought overthinking. They experience an unwanted thought and immediately become frightened by its presence. They begin asking themselves why they thought it, what it means, whether it says something terrible about them, or whether having the thought makes it more likely to come true. In many cases, the suffering comes less from the thought itself and more from the analysis that follows. Finally, there is existential overthinking. These are the questions that touch the deepest mysteries of life. Why are we here? What is my purpose? What happens after death? What is consciousness? What is reality? These questions can be beautiful and meaningful, but they can also become exhausting when the mind demands certainty, where certainty may not exist. On the surface, these forms of overthinking appear very different. Yet underneath them all lies the same desire. The desire to feel safe. The desire to eliminate uncertainty. The desire to finally arrive at a place where nothing can hurt us. And that desire leads us directly into the next challenge. At the heart of overthinking lies a belief that most people never consciously notice. It is the belief that if we just think about something a little longer, we will finally feel safe. We tell ourselves that if we can analyze every angle, predict every possible outcome, replay every conversation, and consider every consequence, we will eventually arrive at a place where uncertainty disappears. The mind becomes convinced that peace is waiting just on the other side of one more thought. The challenge is that certainty rarely arrives in the way we hope it will. Life does not provide guarantees. Relationships involve risk. Careers involve uncertainty. Health can change, people surprise us. Even our best decisions often contain unknowns that cannot be resolved ahead of time. Yet the mind continues searching, believing that if it works hard enough, it can somehow remove all possibility of pain before it happens. Imagine using a search engine that never produces a final answer. Every result generates 3 new questions. Every conclusion opens another possibility that must be explored. That is often what overthinking feels like. The mind is working tirelessly, not because it is broken, but because it is trying to solve a problem that cannot be fully solved. It is attempting to eliminate uncertainty itself. For many people, this realization can feel both frustrating and liberating. Frustrating because we naturally want certainty. Liberating because it reveals why so much mental effort often leaves us feeling exhausted rather than reassured. The goal was never to think our way into complete safety. The goal was to find a way to feel safe, even when certainty is unavailable. This is where a profound shift begins to occur. Instead of asking, "How can I become certain?" we begin asking, "How can I learn to live with uncertainty?" Those questions may sound similar, but they lead to very different destinations. One keeps us trapped inside endless analysis. The other opens the door to freedom. When people become overwhelmed by their thoughts, their natural instinct is usually to try to make those thoughts disappear. This seems completely reasonable. If certain thoughts are causing anxiety, fear, or discomfort, then getting rid of them should bring relief. Yet many people discover that the harder they try to stop thinking about something, the more persistent it becomes. A worry that was initially small grows louder. An intrusive thought becomes more frequent. A fear that seemed manageable begins demanding more and more attention. There is a simple reason for this. In order to stop a thought, the mind must continually check whether the thought is still present. It is a little like trying not to think about a pink elephant. The moment you tell yourself not to imagine it, your mind immediately creates the image so it can monitor whether you are succeeding. The same process often occurs with anxious thoughts. We become so focused on whether a thought is present that we unintentionally keep bringing our attention back to it. The mind interprets attention as importance. If you spend all day checking for a particular thought, your brain naturally assumes that thought must matter. It concludes that the thought contains valuable information or potential danger. As a result, it continues bringing the thought forward, believing it is helping you. What began as an attempt to gain control turns into a cycle, where the struggle itself keeps the thought alive. Many people spend years fighting this invisible battle. They argue with their thoughts, suppress them, analyze them, and try to reason them away. Yet, despite all of that effort, the mind often grows louder rather than quieter. This is not a sign of failure. It is simply evidence that thoughts do not respond well to force. In many cases, peace begins not when we finally defeat our thoughts, but when we stop treating them as enemies that need to be defeated. The moment we stop fighting every thought, we create space for a different possibility. Instead of asking how to eliminate thoughts, we can begin asking how to relate to them differently. And that question leads us toward one of the most important discoveries on the path to inner peace. Most of us spend much of our lives assuming that our thoughts are accurate reflections of reality. If a thought appears repeatedly, we assume it must be important. If it carries a strong emotional charge, we assume it must be true. If it sounds convincing, we often accept it without question. Yet when we step back and observe the mind carefully, we begin to notice something surprising. The mind produces an incredible variety of thoughts every day, many of which contradict one another. One moment the mind says we are capable. The next moment it says we are not. One day it predicts success. The next day it predicts failure. Sometimes it creates stories about what other people think of us. Sometimes it invents catastrophic futures that never come to pass. Sometimes it replays old memories and presents them as evidence that we should remain afraid today. The mind is constantly generating interpretations, predictions, memories, and narratives. This does not mean thoughts are bad. Many thoughts are helpful. Some inspire creativity, solve problems, and guide wise decisions. The difficulty arises when we assume that every thought deserves our trust, simply because it appeared in our minds. A thought can say, I'm not good enough. A thought can say, something terrible is about to happen. A thought can say, everyone is judging me. The appearance of those thoughts does not automatically make them true. One helpful way to understand is to imagine the sky and the clouds that move through it. Clouds change constantly. Some are light and beautiful, others are dark and dramatic. Yet none of them alter the nature of the sky itself. The sky remains vast enough to hold every cloud that passes through. In the same way, awareness is large enough to hold every thought that moves through the mind. Thoughts come and go. Awareness remains. As we begin to recognize this distinction, a new kind of freedom emerges. We realize that we can observe a thought without obeying it. We can notice a fear without surrendering to it. We can experience uncertainty without becoming consumed by it. The goal is not to stop thinking. The goal is to remember that we are more than the thoughts passing through our minds. For the next few moments, allow yourself to become comfortable. If it feels safe to do so, gently close your eyes and take a slow, easy breath in. Hold it for a moment, and then release it softly. Allow another breath to follow naturally. There is nowhere you need to go right now, and nothing you need to accomplish. Simply give yourself permission to be present. Imagine that you are sitting beside a calm river beneath a vast night sky. Above you, countless stars shimmer softly in the darkness. The air is cool and peaceful, and the steady movement of the water creates a sense of quiet rhythm. As you sit beside the river, notice that each thought you have appears as a leaf floating on the surface of the water. One leaf carries a worry about the future. Another carries a memory from the past. A third carries a self-critical thought that has visited you many times before. Perhaps an intrusive thought appears on another leaf. Maybe there is a fear, a doubt, a question, or an uncertainty that has been asking for your attention. As each leaf appears, simply watch it drift by. Notice that you do not need to grab the leaves. You do not need to examine them. You do not need to determine whether they are right or wrong. You do not need to push them away. The river is already carrying them forward. Your only job is to sit quietly and observe. As you continue watching, begin to notice something deeper. The leaves are moving. The river is moving. Yet there is a part of you that remains still. There is a quiet awareness beneath all the mental activity. The thoughts come and go. The worries come and go. The memories come and go. But awareness remains present through all of it. Spend a few moments resting in that awareness. Notice the space between yourself and the thoughts passing by. Notice that you are not being pulled downstream with every leaf. You are simply witnessing their movement. Allow yourself to experience the possibility that your thoughts are not commands. They are not emergencies. They are simply experiences moving through the landscape of the mind. Take another slow breath in and a gentle breath out as you return your attention to the present moment. Carry this understanding with you. The river will continue to flow. Thoughts will continue to appear. But you do not have to follow every one of them. Many people believe that peace will arrive once they become certain. They imagine that if they can answer every question, eliminate every doubt, and predict every outcome, they will finally be able to relax. Yet if you look closely at your own experience, you may notice that certainty rarely lasts for very long. The moment one question is answered, another often appears to take its place. This is why lasting peace is rarely built upon certainty alone. Certainty is fragile because life is constantly changing. New situations emerge, new challenges arise, new unknowns appear. If our sense of safety depends entirely on certainty, then our peace becomes dependent on conditions we cannot fully control. Self-trust offers a different path. Self-trust does not require knowing exactly what will happen. Instead, it is the quiet confidence that says, I may not know what comes next, but I trust myself to meet it when it arrives. It is the understanding that even if circumstances change, you possess the ability to learn, adapt, recover, and grow. This shift may seem subtle, but it changes everything. Instead of demanding guarantees from life, we begin cultivating trust in our own capacity to navigate life. We stop measuring our safety by how much control we have over the future and begin measuring it by the strength of our relationship with ourselves. As self-trust grows, uncertainty loses much of its power. The future remains unknown, but it no longer feels quite so threatening. We begin to understand that we do not need perfect predictions in order to move forward. We only need the willingness to take the next step and trust that we can handle what comes after that. As we come to the end of this reflection, I want to return to a simple idea that may be worth carrying with you long after this video ends. Your mind is not broken because it produces thoughts. It is doing what minds have always done. It is searching, questioning, predicting, remembering, and trying in its own imperfect way to keep you safe. The presence of thoughts is not the problem. The challenge arises when we assume that every thought deserves our attention, our belief, and our energy. Over time, we can learn a different way of relating to the mind. We can become curious about our thoughts rather than intimidated by them. We can notice them without immediately following them. We can observe them without assuming they define who we are. The river will continue to flow. Thoughts will continue to come and go. Some will be pleasant. Some will be uncomfortable. Some will seem urgent. Yet none of them require you to climb aboard and travel wherever they lead. You have the ability to remain grounded in the awareness that observes them all. The next time you find yourself caught in a loop of overthinking, see if you can pause for a moment and remember this. The goal is not to stop every thought. The goal is not to achieve perfect certainty. The goal is to cultivate enough awareness and self-trust that thoughts no longer control the direction of your life. Your mind may always produce thoughts, but you do not have to live inside every one of them. Your heart is ready, and whenever you need a reminder, I'll be right here.